Hey, I just got back from seeing Spider-Man Homecoming. Let's talk about it. Alright, so it takes place after Captain America's Civil War. Tony Stark has recruited Peter Parker to help them out as Spider-Man. And now Peter Parker has had a taste of what it means to be in the big leagues, to actually do this superhero thing with real superheroes. And now he's just hanging around waiting for the real recruitment call, so it can be a proper Avenger. So what's he do until then? Well, we got a movie. And that context is what gets me really excited about Spider-Man Homecoming, because to me, this is a sign that the superhero genre has fully matured. We're finally starting to see that real comic book effect, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't just a matter of sequels and spin-offs. It's a broader fictional context that has vast fingers, right? And I don't think we've really seen much like this in cinema before. On this scale, in this kind of way. Now, in other Marvel movies, like, there have been references to other movies in that universe, right? But they're mostly like head nods and Easter eggs. Civil War, you start really seeing it come together. You don't get more obvious in the Avenger movies, how all these things pull together. But now we're seeing individual stories of individual characters being fully affected by what's happening in the broader context of the cinematic universe. For example, Tony Stark obviously is in this movie. You've seen it in the trailers, but it's not just a cameo. He's like a full-fledged character in the movie. Tony Stark is a driving force for the actions that happen, for the events that happen. It's not just a head nod. He's a character, right? There's so much about this movie that really defines it to me as the first superhero film that has really existed after the superhero genre has reached full maturation. Because it just tries a bunch of new things. It's fresh. Big thing right off the bat, it gets rid of the origin story, which is honestly something I've been waiting to happen in superhero films for a long time. It feels almost like it's an obligation anytime a new superhero franchise is launched. They have to show the origin story. Frankly, I'm sick of origin stories. I'm bored of them. And the fact that Spider-Man Homecoming skips this, it makes me so happy. And honestly, with Spider-Man, we've already seen it twice before. We don't need to hear the story again. That's a huge boon to this movie. It just jumps right into it. But it's not just the origin story, it's not just the broader context of the universe, like all kinds of things. For example, people know who Spider-Man is. This is the first Spider-Man film where he has friends that know he's Spider-Man, right? That hasn't really been expressed before, right? But also things about the franchise have been kind of updated for the modern era. For example, like Flash, the school bully, isn't like a football jock. He's a nerdy DJ. And honestly, like, I think it's a great update to it because, like, I just don't feel like football has the same cultural capital that it used to in, like, the 80s or whatever, right? Are football quarterbacks still the popular kids in high school? I got no idea. And by jumping straight into Spider-Man after he's already Spider-Man and having this broader cinematic universe for context, they've been able to throw things into the movie that otherwise they haven't really been able to reach beforehand. Like, for example, Tony Stark has built Spider-Man's suit that's revealed in Civil War. Now that thing has all these extra features, things that have been seen in the comics before, but are kind of like, I guess, more advanced stuff, special kinds of webbing and stuff like that, which none of the movies have really ever been able to build up to otherwise, and these new features kind of make Spider-Man once again feel fresh. The context that Spider-Man gets put into is also different. For example, you see Spider-Man in the suburbs for the first time. The movie it has a broader scope than just New York City. He travels around, right? The swinging from skyscrapers is iconic to Spider-Man. But with these movies, you get to see him outside of that skyscraper environment. And that's also interesting to see. You got him running through people's backyards in the suburbs, getting tossed in the pool, stuff like that. It's new, it's different. All this stuff allows the third iteration of this superhero franchise to still be interesting. And now that we've kind of been through superhero movies a lot now, we don't have to hit the same old story beats, and Spider-Man takes advantage of that as well. In Spider-Man Homecoming, it's really more of a character story. The interesting part about Spider-Man Homecoming isn't the horrible conflict with the supervillain. It's watching Peter Parker be a kid and trying to balance being a superhero with, doing his homework and extracurricular activities and things like that. That's the interesting part of Spider-Man. And that also applies to the villain, right? I'd almost argue that the Vulture isn't even really like a super villain. He doesn't really have superpowers. He's got some pretty cool technology, but, nothing compared to Tony Stark. His Vulture suit is pretty awesome, but it's not some absurd, unstoppable battle tank or anything. There's a reason why the guy spends most of his time in hiding, just not wanting to be noticed. And so the Vulture is way more than just a superpowered baddie. He's an actual character. You get why he's doing this. The guy's involved in the arms trade, and there's one point at the end when Spider-Man's trying to stop him. He's just like, how do you think, Tony Stark got all his money, right? He's doing the same thing I did. He was also selling weapons, right? And you hear that, and you're like, oh, gosh, guys might have a point. Even at the climax of the movie, what's really driving it is the dynamics of the characters and their relations to each other, not necessarily superpowered fights. In fact, Spider-Man Homecoming doesn't even really have that typical genre trope of a huge superpowered battle at the end. It resolves in another way. There's still a conflict, but it's not simply a matter of who can beat down the other guy. Superhero movies have been around for a long time now, at least a decade in its current kind of cultural capacity. And when it's been around this long, people they don't feel like they need to hit all the beats they had to anymore. People are starting to play with the genre. And I feel like that's what Spider-Man Homecoming has done. It doesn't feel the obligation of a comic book movie before comic book movies, right? Where everything had to be huge and everything had to be epic. It's taken the liberty to kind of get away from that a little bit and try to do something a little bit differently. And that's, I think it worked. Spider-Man Homecoming was a damn good time. I had a lot of fun with it. I give it an 8 out of 10. It's not the most amazing movie in the world, but it's a damn fun one. Great night out at the movies and damn solid. So I recommend going to check it out. And I hope other comic movies try to follow suit and try to do something a little different with their movies as well. Looking forward to the next one. Hey, well, those are my thoughts and feelings. Tell me what you thought of Spider-Man Homecoming in the comments below. And if you like this, feel free to subscribe. I think I'd like to do more movie reviews. I really enjoy Jeremy Jans and some other guys' stuff. Chris something. Yeah, so I'd like to do more of these. So hopefully I'll have more in the future. Please subscribe. Oh, and I did shoot and film my first movie ever last weekend for the 48-hour film project. If you want to check it out, you can see it here. Revenge in the Afternoon, a martial arts movie. Yeah.